Welcome to another edition of the 5-Star Zone. I'm your host, Rico Beard. Joining me today, Brandon Brown, publisher of the Wolverine Digest, because, I've been told that I'm a little biased when it comes to Michigan. So I go to my man right here when I need Wolverine information. I mean, he's got to be good. He's got a Thriller album in the background. So anybody that has the Michael Jackson love, you're always welcome here on the 5-Star Zone. We'll get to that Thriller stuff later. All right, Brandon. The Michigan spring game is coming up this week. Let's just start off with just a general overview. What should fans expect to see at the Big House this Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of a question mark, obviously, with Sharon Moore being in charge now. But I mean, everybody feels like it's going to look pretty much exactly like it looked under Jim Harbaugh. There's not really a major reason to change it. It's funny, I've been talking to some friends and different people who are going or watching on TV or whatever about how Michigan and a lot of schools handle the spring game a little differently. Some schools really, I mean, they really pump it up to be like this major event. And Michigan doesn't really do that. I mean, they don't go 1 versus 1s. They do like a draft. And so the teams that play against each other are combinations of guys you're never going to see during the season. You don't have your 5 starting offensive linemen. You don't have your quarterback throwing to your 1, 2, 3 receivers. So it's hard to really gauge exactly what what it'll look like in the fall. So that always makes it a little bit tricky. I mean, I think the players dig that because it's a little more competitive. They're actually trying to score and beat each other. Whereas when it's 1-on-1s, there's concern about injury and there's concerns about tipping your hand, which I think is nonsense. But I wish we would see the starters because you'd get to see more. But of course, that's the whole reason that we don't. So we can't see more. So I think it'll look a lot like it did under Jim Harbaugh. It'll be competitive. It'll be a real game-like setting, but you're probably not going to see anything close to what it will look like come the fall. And that's been the formula for a while, and it's been pretty successful. So that's what they'll continue to do. Also, if a guy has like a scrape on his shin, he's probably not going to play, and that's always a little bit of a bummer too. You want to see Donovan Edwards get out there and run. You want to see Colston Loveland make some big plays. You want to see, is Alex Orji the guy at quarterback right now? What's he going to look like? And then those guys don't end up playing a whole lot. So it's still football in April. It's supposed to be pretty nice for once. Michigan's had some rough luck with weather the last handful of years, but I think Saturday's going to cooperate.
You have the spring game in March.
I know. A little later this year, and so hopefully, 55 and sunny will be cool, and we'll enjoy the day. We'll see what it looks like.
All right, you talked about Alex Orji, and when it comes to Michigan, I mean, the phrase has always been, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. Mm-hmm. Michigan has 4 or 5 quarterbacks. Like, JJ was the guy. He was the man. He led you to a national title, back-to-back Final Fours. How do you replace him? Who replaces him? And I guess the other question is his replacement on the roster right now?
That's the biggest question. That is the question heading into the season. I mean, I think if they're playing a game tomorrow, it is Alex Orji. I mean, that's the vibe. When you ask the players, he's always the first name they mention, and then they kind of, I think I just gave something away. Then they'll mention 2 or 3 other guys. But it's like, okay, it's Orji right now. That's pretty clear. He does bring a dynamic angle of being able to run the ball. I mean, he's 235. He's bigger than Jalen Milroe. I mean, like that's how big this dude is and how he's put together. If he could get to a Jalen Milroe level where throwing the ball is serviceable and then you can complement that with the run, that would be ideal. But we just haven't seen him throw it. I mean, he's played a handful of snaps and never thrown the ball in games. Last year in the spring game, threw it here and there, wasn't overly accurate, and that's the concern. Can he tone it down a little bit? He's got a big arm. He's got a strong arm, but that's not everything. Michigan fans remember Joe Milton very well. He could throw it a mile, but he couldn't complete the short passes or the ones that he needed to complete. And so everybody's waiting to see how accurate Alex Orji can be. When everybody knows the running talent is there, the size is there, that he'll be able to tote it 10 or 15 times a game if you need him to. But yeah, the accuracy is a question mark. And so I don't know how much of that you'll be able to gauge on Saturday, but I mean, if he's making good throws and he's accurate and he's on time and he doesn't turn it over, that would be pretty promising heading into the fall. So, the spring football is getting ready to wrap up for most of the schools across the country. You're starting to see names here and there jump into the portal. And I'm for Michigan shopping pretty hard for a quarterback, even if it's just for more competition and depth, because you just don't know. You don't know if that guy's there right now. But I think if it's a tomorrow, it's Orji.
Okay, precedent has been set already because you kind of did this with Michigan. If one of the Ohio State quarterbacks jumped into the portal, would they look at one of those guys? Because Ohio State has, to me, 3 starters who could possibly start, but you can only play one, which means 2 guys are going to be upset and may leave. Would Michigan go after one of the Buckeye QBs?
They're cool with it with Tony Alford. I mean, I don't know why.
Right.
I don't know why it matters if the guy's wearing a helmet or not. I mean, you're right. It's not something you see all that often, but hey, if it's a guy that can make your roster better and he's going to be definitely a better quarterback option, I don't care where he comes from. I don't know if the coaches or the staff would feel cool doing that. I could care less. I mean, if it's going to make your roster better, go get the guy. I mean, you've seen that for a handful of years now. It does. I mean, there was the one year, I can't remember exactly which year it was, all 4 quarterbacks in the playoff were at a new school. I mean, like that's the name of the game. If you can find a guy and he's your best option, then get him. I don't care where he's from. So I wouldn't think it would happen, but I'd be fine with it.
So, like I said, so it looks like Orji is the guy, not really tipping their hand. Now, going into the fall, Brandon, do you think that this is something that maybe like they run 2 different quarterbacks out there, or whoever wins the job from day one, that's your quarterback? We're not playing the quarterback shuffle game.
I hate the quarterback shuffle game. Again, under new leadership, you've got Sharon running things now instead of Jim Harbaugh. You've got Kirk Campbell as the quarterback's coach and OC, so he's certainly going to be more involved. A lot of it's a question mark because we just haven't seen how these guys do things yet. I personally think you just find your guy and you go with him. I don't like when they started Cade for the one game and then it was Jay. I mean, everybody knew it was going to be JJ. I'm like, just play the guy. Like the question always was, are there things that Cade can do that JJ can't? No. Are there things that JJ can do that Cade can't? Yeah. So there's your guy. Go with him. And I think you could ask that same question about Alex Orji and the rest of the gang right now. I think we don't know. There's a lot of unknown with his game, but I feel like he does things that no other quarterback on the roster can do, and then vice versa. That's not true. So I hope if they are leaning towards Orji, they don't do any kind of like audition or anything like that. Plus, you got Texas week 2. There ain't no time for that nonsense this year. You got to have your guy, and you got to be ready to roll, especially by week 2, because that's a huge game, and Texas is. They're probably one of the favorites to make the Final Four this year. So you got to be ready to roll by week 2.
Talking with Brandon Brown. He's the publisher of the Wolverine Digest, and Brandon is kind enough to join me. Brandon, I got a ton of Wolverine questions for you.
Okay.
You talk about the schedule and coming in and having Texas. You're going to have the teams from the Pac-12 now joining the Big Ten. A ton of people going into the draft. I mean, heck, you may have JJ may go as high as I've seen 4 or 5 in this year's draft. A lot of turnover, new coach in Sharon Moore. If you took away the helmet, the winged helmet, you took away the maize and blue colors, and you just put them in, blue and orange and put an Illinois eye on the side of the helmet, how would you feel this team would be doing, losing so much going into next season?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this 100 times. I think even if Jim Harbaugh is back, he was going to have a tough go. I mean, this schedule is brutal. You're losing, like you said, 20-plus guys. 18 of them were at the combine. You expect almost all of them to get drafted. Then you've got undrafted free agent guys. So you're talking 20-plus guys who might have at least a cup of coffee in the NFL. That's a massive turnover for a college roster. Michigan's done a little bit in the transfer portal, but it's not like they went nuts and went and found 15 new guys. So there is a lot to replace. You're going to have 5 brand new starters on the offensive line, guys who have started in spots before, but not regular everyday guys. Brand new quarterback replacing JJ, like you said. The wide receiver room is thin. Defense is pretty good, but not as deep. The starters are pretty well set, but there's not as much depth as there has been in the last couple of years. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough go. I think, in the past, every year you look at Michigan's schedule, and it's like a 2 or 3 game schedule. I mean, everybody kind of can get on board with that. Every once in a while, Michigan would lose a dumb one to an Illinois or an Indiana or a Purdue or something. That happens. But every year you look at that schedule and you're like, all right, this year it's Penn State, Ohio State, Maybe it's a Wisconsin up year, Michigan State in previous years. It's 2, 3, 4 games, and you got to win 3 or 4 of those games. This year, it's like 6, and 3 or 4 of them are really good. So I think if Sharon Moore can take those 6 games and win 3 of them, that's a pretty good season for him to start off in year one, given the fact that, like you said, almost an entirely new staff across the board, entirely new staff on defense, bunch of new guys playing, personnel changes all over the place, and a really, really hard schedule. If you can go 500 in those marquee matchups and you're sitting at 9-3 or 10-2, maybe best case, I think you're probably in the top 12, and you're looking at another playoff run with the expanded field this year. So that would be really, really good for Sharon in year one. And nobody's expecting him to run a table this year. That's not going to happen.
Well, see, that's because my next question is, what's the expectations for Sharon Moore? Because coming in, following up Harbaugh, as I said, back-to-back Final Fours, a national title last year, and over Washington, and now you're the guy who happens to be sitting in the seat, and you almost have to overhaul this team. On top of that, a few days ago, you get hit with some NCAA sanctions. You have a couple of assistant coaches who are kind of doing their own thing. How much leeway does he get if, because would 9-3 be acceptable for Wolverine Nation based off of the history you've had in the last 2 years?
I think fairly it has to be. I know people aren't going to like that, and I know you got the three-peat Big Ten titles and the perfect season last year, and unfortunately, the only way to go from last year is down. You can't do any better than last year. You can't. I mean, you could repeat it. Nobody's predicting that in year one under Sharon Moore. The schedule is just very, very tough. And I think when, quarterback is just so paramount and you just don't know what you have there. You knew what you had last year. JJ proved to be the guy. He took him all the way. And I don't know how anyone can have that as a realistic expectation, especially when you look at that schedule with Washington, Texas, obviously Ohio State, Penn State back on there again, USC. I mean, that's a brutal stretch of games. I know USC is probably going to be down a little bit this year too, but it's just such a tough stretch throughout the course of the season that to expect to win them all is just, it's not fair. It's just not fair for Sharon Moore. So I think
Oregon this year.
And Oregon, yes. I forgot to mention Oregon. So
I was just curious, yeah.
Yeah, and they went out and got a transfer quarterback to keep things moving there. So it's a really, really tough. Yeah, so that's the 6 right there. I think you got Texas, USC, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, and Washington. That's 6 games that could easily go either way, in my opinion. Now, yeah, Washington lost their guy too. So they're trying to figure things out a little bit. New coach there. So everybody's going through a little something, but Michigan losing 20 guys, that's almost the entire coaching staff and that schedule. You got to give Sharon a little bit of time to get his thing going a little bit, but he still has a really good team. So I think 9 wins has to be the floor, and you have to be okay with that. You just have to be.
Now he's already 1-0 against the Buckeyes. Mm-hmm. Ohio State seems to be the only team that really didn't take a step back. They got rich. They got fat off of all the transfer portal players. Seems like everybody wanted to go and play in Columbus. I mean, do you see this thing keep rolling, or is this the year that the Buckeyes finally can say, "Hey, we took our crown"?
They look good on paper, but they always look good on paper. I mean, this every year that Michigan has won, the last 3 in a row, I'm pretty sure Ohio State always all season long had the stronger odds to make the play. I couldn't really figure out that formula. And I'm like, where the first year I'm like, all right, we'll see what happens. The next year, and I'm like, they didn't really get that much better. Michigan's still just as good. Like, how are they? And this one's in Michigan. Like, how are they figuring this out? It hasn't really changed for me. I mean, every year I go into that game thinking Ohio State's Ohio State. They can win this game, no question. And then Michigan has just been too physical and too much of a bully on the ground, and they've been able to win the last 3. I mean, I think on paper Ohio State does look better, but that hasn't mattered in my opinion. They've recruited better than Michigan every year for the past 15. I mean, they've been bringing in guys. They've had future pros. They've had first-round picks. Last 3 years, it has not mattered. So I think without knowing what's going to happen at quarterback for Michigan, you don't know what happens at quarterback for Ohio State either. It's really hard to judge right now. But yeah, I mean, going out and getting Quinshot Judkins to have that 1-2 punch with Travion Henderson is scary. They've got 5-star kids all over the defense. They've got a really really potent wide receiver room, as they always do. I mean, like I said, that's not really new. I mean, they had this incredible roster last year and the year before that. So I don't know. We'll see. I feel like I'd be doing an injustice to make a prediction right now, but I'm never afraid to pick Ohio State.
Well, come on, man.
They're good.
What else we got to do right now? It's April. We got to make predictions.
If you're holding it to me right now on April 18th, I would pick Ohio State. It's back in Columbus. I do think they look better on paper. I think Michigan has a lot to figure out. But you know how, I mean, the end of November is not like the beginning of the season. So we'll see. But that's where I would be at today. I think I can say that without getting shoes thrown at me. Maybe. I don't know.
Nah, you're good. Going back to Sharon Moore. Okay, so Brandon, does he just have to have a come to Jesus meeting with his assistant coaches? Do you got to get an NIL package with Uber or Lyft and just say, guys, enough of this? Because, now with the allegations of what happened with Denard Robinson, you had the D-line coach. I mean, is this just two isolated incidences, or is it just, I guess, a different culture going on the coaching staff?
I think I don't know anything about Greg Scruggs. We didn't even get a chance to meet him. He was only there a couple weeks, and then he's kicked out. So that it seems isolated for these two guys. I mean, this has not been a concern for Michigan in the past with this DUI stuff. I mean, I don't know where that's coming from all of a sudden, and dumb. I mean, there's no other way to explain. It's just dumb, especially for a guy like Greg Scruggs, who, had climbed the ladder, had been, kind of working his way up and had a lot of good things going for him. Denard's been an analyst for a while now. He wasn't an on-field position coach yet, but his name was lightly mentioned as a maybe running backs coach when Mike Hart was looking like he was on his way out. Of course, Michigan got Tony Alford instead, and I think that's a better hire. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But Denard's Denard. I mean, he's beloved around Ann Arbor. Players still, recognize him and remember what he was able to do. He's a young guy, but he had an incident like this when he was in Jacksonville too. So this, I mean, isolated maybe as terms of a Michigan coaching staff thing, but not for him. And, the precedent has been set. I don't know how he's not fired or resigned or whatever within the next couple of days. As of right now, he's just suspended indefinitely, but it's just stupid. It's like you said, there's Fortune 500 companies out there that do that. They provide Uber cards or Lyft cards for their employees, so they don't do this kind of crap. I don't know why you would do it. You got a lot to lose when you're in that position, and there's really no excuse for it. So, I love Denard Robinson. He was a bright, shining star during some low Michigan moments, and now he should be fired. I mean, that's just the way it is, and it stinks, and I wish he wouldn't have done it, but precedent's been set. I don't think you can fire Greg Scruggs a month ago or 3 weeks ago and have any different outcome for Denard. So it is what it is, man. Got to be smarter than that.
Right. Talking with Brandon Brown. He's the publisher of the Wolverine Digest. And Brandon, you brought up Mike Hart. Was Mike Hart not coming back simply, I wanted the head coaching job and I didn't get it, so I don't know if I really want to sit and be your subordinate?
I do think there was some of that. I mean, he's been an associate head coach before. He certainly, has paid his dues just as much, if not more, than Sharon Moore has. Maybe not at Michigan. Technically, Sharon's been there longer, but I mean, he's been auditioning or campaigning and interviewing for head coaching jobs for a few years now, and then to kind of be passed over like that, I'm sure that didn't feel good. And he's a Michigan legend. I mean, so that shouldn't matter when it comes to coaching, but in your head it has to. I mean, really, doesn't matter how good of a player you were. That doesn't have anything to do with coaching. But I'm sure in Mike Hart's head, he's thinking like, I'm Mike Hart, man. Like, you remember what I did here? And that
radio silent, and it was like,
yeah,
you heard from him, and like, what's going on with Mike Hart? Is he back? And then he just finally was like, yeah, I'm gone. But it really was no reason. He just, I'm not coming back.
Yeah, and there were some talks about his health and some personal issues. You remember he had the health thing a couple seasons ago where he collapsed at Indiana and then missed part of the season. So I mean, there were some other things discussed as to maybe why he was taken off for a little while. But I do get the sense, and I don't have exact direct information from Mike Hart or Sharon Moore, but I have to imagine that rubbed him the wrong way a little bit. Not personally. I don't think he took it personal that Sharon Moore got the job, but he would have love to get that position, and he didn't. And so, then all this, him and Sharon are pretty close to the same age. They've been doing their thing, and now, there's no path for him to be the coach at Michigan now at this point. I mean, not for several years at least, probably. So, yeah, I would have to imagine that was a pretty big blow to the ego and just didn't make him feel that good. And, away he goes. I wish him the best with it, but, it is what it is. Jim Harbaugh kind of anointed Sharon the guy before it was ever really a thing, and that's how it played out. So that's what it is.
And then, Brandon, earlier this week, the NCAA came down with their sanctions from the 2020 recruiting violations. Does this mean anything for Michigan, or is this simply just kind of something that, okay, well, that part is over and we're going to move on? Like, because I don't think it's a reduction of scholarships in there. It just really seemed like a lot of word soup. This is what happened. But in the end, what does it really mean to Michigan for this upcoming year?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like much. I mean, usually when they reduce scholarships, they say that, and they didn't. And I don't know what else. I mean, you've been covering recruiting longer than I have. Is it less coaches out on the road? Is it less hours that I'm not even really sure what other punishments can come if there isn't a reduction.
Was like, 5 individuals have show causes, and if 4 pretty much said, okay, well, we'll agree to this, and 1 didn't, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who's the one that didn't. But it's like, yeah, okay, show causes. And so, like I said, to me, it seemed like a lot of word soup, but I didn't really see how it would affect this team.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I mean, the infractions were pretty minor. The punishments seem just as minor. I don't know. I mean, it's another thing. It's weird how the NCAA, like, this isn't even the guys that did it. Like, that's always the weird thing with the NCAA. It's like, now Sharon's the head coach. He's got 8 new coaches. Like, they weren't even on the staff when this stuff was going on, and they're the ones that are going to feel the punishment for it. So that's always been a little bit weird with the NCAA. The head, Jim Harbaugh's off in LA living the dream, and here's the the staff at Michigan getting handed down this punishment a little bit. But yeah, it kind of feels like a probation type of thing. Just don't screw up again, and you guys will be all right. That's what it feels like.
Herein lies the rub. Don't screw up again, but there's a second violation that's out there that you're waiting to hear. Because I'm wondering, like, for everything that happened last year, that happened in real time with the Counter Stallions incident. Let's just leave it at that. So I'm wondering, does that now trigger, does it like escalate the probation? Okay, well, you're already on probation. Because what I like to say, it's like getting 2 different speeding tickets within 6 months of each other. The second ticket, the judge is going to be like, oh, well, you already got hit with a ticket. So you know what? I was going to go lenient on you, but now I'm not, because this is a pattern. Is this one that I guess the Wolverines are kind of waiting for the ruling on this next infraction to happen before, I guess, you really see anything happening?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, I guess it depends on how it's approached. Obviously, one was a recruiting thing, one was a scouting thing. So they're not on the same plane in terms of what rules they were breaking. But I don't know. I mean, how can you know that? Is it the same people handling the things? Is it a completely different set of people? Is it how long? I mean, the NCAA doesn't do things quickly. I mean, all that stuff that took place last year was Big Ten stuff. It wasn't anything to do with the NCAA. Is the NCAA even going to be a thing? Is it going to be disbanded by the time? Who knows, man? There's so many moving parts with it, and you just wonder. Again, all the people that were involved are no longer there. I mean, Harbaugh's gone, Stallions is gone, all the defensive coaches are gone, coordinator's gone, Sharon's still there. He would be like the one holdover. So it's just one of those things. And if you go back to all the rulings and all the findings, look, I'm going to sit here. I mean, I still have my hat. I did a Connor Stallions impression for one of my own podcasts. Right? I know the guy was doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing, but in terms of what the NCAA came out and said they found, they still haven't really doled out anything definitive in writing about anything. So it's like CMU's not saying anything. I mean, like, it's still such a weird, just all around deal that I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. And at the end of the day, how they went about the signs was wrong, but having them wasn't. So it's like, how big of a rule breaking was it really at the end of the day? Like, how does the NCAA view that as a broken rule? And so I don't know. That whole thing is just still like one of the dumbest things I can ever remember. Like,
You know
you
what,
clearly didn't need to do it, and why was he out there doing that thing? I just don't get it.
Brandon? It was like a bad Hollywood script.
It
Like,
was terrible.
okay, you know what? And on top of this, you're going to be on another team's sideline in some glasses and a hat, and it's like, yeah, that script would have got rejected by every Hollywood studio. Like, come on, guys, this isn't even Netflix type material. You got to do better than this.
Yeah,
but it happened, and it happened in real time, and it leads me to wonder, because you're right. Is it going to take another 3 years to finally come down with a ruling, or is this something that, because it kind of happened right then and there, they can move on quickly? Or, as you said, I don't even know if the NCAA is going to be a thing, because they're being sued by everybody over the whole transfer situation. Speaking of which, I said I'm not going to keep you long.
No, we're good.
Yeah, you're right. You were late for this.
I owe you. I'm good. I'm on the hook now.
So I guess when it comes to transfer, because Michigan's always had a problem with kids transferring in. It seems like it's a credit thing. I talked to some academic people, and it was just like, I'm like, why won't you accept these credits? We're like, they didn't take those classes at Michigan. I'm like, okay, well, math is math. Like,
yeah.
Does Michigan have new numbers that nobody else has? Like, why? So is there still going to be that problem going forward with getting people to come in? Do you have to go the grad transfer route, or just kind of blow up your credits and say, I'm willing to start all over again?
It's always seemed like it's basically it's like this. Like, if a kid goes to school somewhere for 3 years and then wants to transfer to Michigan, so that in other words, he'd come to Michigan for a year and get that Michigan degree. Michigan doesn't like that. Like, you didn't really get a Michigan degree. You just came for the last little bit, and now you got that paper with the block M on it. We don't really like that. So real young, freshmen, they haven't started yet. They still got they got to fix. So that's okay. And then grad transfers. Okay, they got their degree from somewhere else. Now they're going to come here and get their graduate degree, and that's cool too. So it's kind of like this weird in-between area. I mean, we saw it. Maybe one of the more famous examples recently was Terrence Shannon from where was he at before he went to Illinois? I forget. Basketball.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, now you got me.
No, I'm stuck too. Anyway, he goes to Illinois,
keep talking.
Has a 2-year run, turns into one of the best scorers in the Big Ten. I mean, that certainly would have helped Juwan Howard's case out a little bit. And same thing with Caleb Love. I mean, there have been guys where this has been a pretty big deal with in the recent years, and that's there you go, Texas Tech. Yeah, so goes from Texas Tech after I think it was 2 years. Now he goes to Illinois. He's there for 2 years, and he looks outstanding. He was one of the best scorers in the Big Ten, and so he was kind of in that middle ground. If it would have been a little earlier for him, or if he had finished at Texas Tech, it might have been a little bit different. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you wonder.
Hey, Brandon, you're welcome.
yeah. Well, maybe because I'm liking what Dusty May is saying so far. We'll see how that looks, but no, you wonder. I mean, Santa Ono is clearly on board with the athletics more than with the previous president for sure. He's all in with that stuff, but he's just one guy. He's not just focused on sports. He's got so many other things to worry about. You wonder what role the Board of Regents play. I mean, there's so many people like pulling strings at Michigan, it feels like, that I don't even know how the hell any of it works. I don't know if it's like that at other places, but every time somebody gets denied, you go to the message boards, or you go to the experts, or you go to the publishers of different sites. It's Ward, it's the president, it's the regents, it's Michigan. It's like, who really is it? Like, what is the problem, and why does this keep happening? So that's above my pay grade, man. I don't know why it's such a problem. There's the players will even say it. Like, the players, they do their thing. Like, I thank God for my talents. If it wasn't for football, I wouldn't be at a place like Michigan. Like, no kidding. Like, just make it work for everybody. I don't get why. I don't get it. I don't get why there's such a problem, and I wish there wasn't, because, like I said, it would have changed the trajectory of a lot of things in a lot of sports, not just basketball, not just football. It's across the board.
But it sounds like Dusty May kind of got assurances that we're going to make it easier for you when he came here. He said it without saying it. Do you see, him making an instant impact? I know we're a long way away from hoops, but how do you?
Well,
is this going to be an instant impact for him? That, I know he's going after some of his former players, but will he be able to go out, because he's kind of starting from fresh with this basketball team.
Yeah, he's going to have like 3 or 4 guys, or maybe 3 or 4 guys who were on the team last year, and everybody else is going to be brand new. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to get 10, 11 guys all of a sudden in through the transfer portal, it's like, well, what have we been doing? Like you just got a whole new roster. Like you said, he kind of said it without saying it. We're going to bring these guys in, and this is how we're going to do it. And you see all kinds. Every kid that jumps in the portal that has Michigan in their top group. Some have a year left of eligibility. Some have 3. Some are grad guys. Some are brand. So it's like it's all of a sudden kind of like, well, since he's starting from scratch and this is going to be tough, we'll let some things slide a little bit right now. And I don't know if that's really how it's going, but that's what it looks like. I mean, all of a sudden, you got guys from FAU, you got guys from Oakland, you got guys from Toledo, you got guys like all of a sudden they all got Michigan in their top group. When in the past I would have thought like, yeah, that's probably not a guy that's going to get through. And so we'll see what that looks like. I mean, it's hard to say how big the impact will be because there's literally not a roster yet. Like you don't even know who's going to be wearing the uniform. But I like what he's saying, and I like his staff a lot. So
if I told you a year ago that Terrace Reed is going to be playing on the back-to-back champion UConn Huskies, would you have even believed me?
So I will say this. I actually like Terrace Reed's game a lot. Clearly, he's liked by, I mean, that's, like you said, that's the back-to-back champs, and they just took his commitment. I don't think he would have been the best fit for Dusty May. Dusty May has talked about wanting to be very, very fast up and down and shoot a lot of threes. Well, Terrace Reed can't shoot, and he's not very fleet of foot. He's got great feet, but he's not fast. There's a difference. He's really good in the post. His footwork's phenomenal, but he's a big dude. He's not a guy that's going to rim run back and forth the whole game. So one player that I think would have thrived for Dusty May is Doug McDaniel. He's tailor-made for that game. Shoot threes, up and down fast. He decides to leave too. He's at K-State now, and I think he would have been really good for Dusty May. But, that's how it goes. New coaches come in and guys leave.
Did we ever find out why he was, like, half pregnant?
Another weird thing, not playing away games, never seen it, never heard of it, think it's so strange. I just talked about that last night on my podcast. I'm like, what the hell was that? That was so weird.
Okay, I thought maybe it was like statute of limitations was up and you guys could actually say because
I have no idea.
He was the definition of a little bit pregnant.
Unless I was they made it seem like it was an academic thing, like he needed to crack down on the books a little bit. But I always thought like maybe he got in trouble out on the road, and so they're like, well, we'll keep you under wraps here. That's still weird. Like you're either in or out, man. Like I don't know. That's weird to me. Well,
for me, I was like, this will be the true test because in theory, when they went and played Michigan State and East Lansing, you can go to classes all day long. You could hop on the bus.
It's an hour, man.
40 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're back home in your own bed.
Yeah.
He didn't come to that game either. So I'm like, well, this must be serious because I thought they would at least bring him to that game.
I mean, culture was busted, man. It was pretty obvious. I mean, Juwan's fighting people in the locker room. You just can't have it, man. And I think that's another. I've never heard of that. How do you suspend a guy for just away games? And I don't know.
I don't know how on a zero tolerance, and he gets into it with Coach Sanderson, and I gotta think. I don't know how it is in Ann Arbor, but in all the brand new facilities in East Lansing, there's cameras everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure it's on tape.
He said, she said, it's like, let's just go to the tape. Oh, there it is right there. But I never saw anybody on zero tolerance. Just, yeah.
That probably, I mean, he might have known right from then, like you're finished out the year, but it's a wrap for you. I don't know. Maybe that is what it was. Cause there were times where he looked checked out and there were times where, I don't remember if the Sanderson thing happened after, like there was a couple games where Juwan just like handed it over to Martelli. He was like, "You're just going to do it today." And maybe, I don't know, that it was not the best. It was not the best finish for him. That's for sure.
So, and now you just brought up something else. And then I promise you, then we'll be done. Talking with Brandon Brown. He's the publisher of the Wolverine Digest. Brandon, you kind of said, whenever anything happens, you always hear of two names. But one is Ward Manuel. Mm-hmm. Is Ward Manuel the guy? Is Ward Manuel the person that's going to continue to lead Michigan? Or should Ward be worried about Santa Ono just saying, hey, you know what, Ward, we're going to go in a different direction?
I'll tell you what, I think And Santaona wasn't there when this happened, but I think Ward's handling of Harbaugh's contract in 2020, which again I had never seen before. All this, you cut a coach's pay in half, and he sticks around and goes on to have the best 3-year run in program. I mean, that looks like a genius move at this point. I remember thinking, like, what the hell why doesn't Harbaugh just leave? Like, why would he stay? But he stayed, and right. We know the reason now. The reason he stayed is because he couldn't get an NFL job then. That's why he stayed. I mean, that's what it was for the last couple of years. So obviously that ended up playing out as perfectly as you could imagine, as you could plan. And I think he did a really good job just hiring Dusty May just now. I think he's done a couple on the two biggest stages, football and basketball. He's done pretty well over the last 2-3 years. We'll see with Sharon Moore. I mean, that's an easy move. I mean, that's not a national search. That's not going out there and finding maybe the absolute best guy for the job, but it's going to go over well in Michigan circles, and the fans are ready for it, and everybody was on board with that approach.
You think we'll get 4 years?
I do, because I think this season's going to be moderately successful. I think the defense is good enough. And I think if Orji is the guy, he'll be serviceable enough where the offense can run the ball and win all the games that they should, and a few of the contested ones. And that puts you at 9 or 10 wins and maybe in the playoff. That's what I think they need to shoot for. So, and back, I always hate the like fire Ward stuff, because personally, and I mean, I cover this stuff I don't even know what Ward really, any athletic director, I don't really know what they do on a day-to-day basis. He's not just dealing with only football. Like, there's 40 athletic programs he's dealing with, and all the shaking hands and kissing babies and all the other stuff. Like, it's a much fuller plate.
Well, don't forget he also loans out cars to point guards.
That was his wife. I mean, at least blame it on the wife.
Okay.
No, I think people are so like, it's the same mob mentality you see like in all facets of society. Like, one person's like, fire Ward, and then 10 other people are like, what'd he say? Yeah, fire Ward. And they don't even know why. It's like,
well, that's why I asked you, because it's like, it doesn't seem like he's the most liked person on
He's
campus.
not, and I don't really know why, to be honest. I mean, he's done some things that probably weren't great. I mean, the problem is people look at it as like, well, he let 5 of the best coaches in Michigan history go. And I'm like, no, he didn't. What was Ward Manuel going to do to John Beilein to make him stay? What was Ward Manuel going to do to make Hutch not retire after coaching for 90 years? I mean, like, Mel Pearson quit doing dumb stuff, and maybe he wouldn't have to fire. I mean, like, people hated Ward for doing things he kind of had to do, or that were out of his control, in my opinion. And now I do think that Dusty May has put the fires out a little bit, but people were all over him for getting rid of Juwan. I'm like, come on, man. He had to do that. Are you kidding me? He had to do that.
No, I got you. Brandon.
I don't know. So that's where I'm at with Ward. I don't hate the guy. I don't think he's the best AD in the country, and I really don't know what he does all day long. So how can I pound the table and say fire the guy? I can't.
I mean, he must be something, because he's now the president of the college football playoff committee.
I mean, somebody likes the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't get it. That's why I asked you. Brandon, appreciate your time today. Brandon Brown, publisher of Wolverine Digest. Make sure you read and check his stuff out. For Brandon, I'm Rico Beard. Thanks for watching the 5-Star Zone. Keep liking, keep subscribing. We'll be back next week for the post-spring games, both Michigan and Michigan State. Until then, I'll see you then. See ya.